Okay, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We are back. We are continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. We this week are going to be looking at Leviticus chapter 4, verses 1 through 35. Leviticus, Vayikra, the 4th chapter, 1 through 35, which actually is the entire chapter. We're going to go ahead and look at that chapter and see what it is we are able to find within it. We want to deal with the subject matter of the chapter, which is when a soul sins unintentionally. When a soul sins unintentionally. Okay, we want to go ahead and be able to look at this and see what we're able to find, how we're able to understand these verses as they relate to the original hearers of the text, and then think about how we're able to kind of allow these verses and this chapter to speak to us where we are even right now. So we want to go ahead. I'm going to pull up the verses over here. We'll just go ahead and we'll just read through the chapter. We'll read through the chapter, and then we'll go back and deal with the various points that we see over here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead here. Let's pull this up. And we'll go ahead and read nice and loud.
And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, When a being sins by mistake against any of the commands of Yahweh, which are not to be done, and shall do any of them, if the anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people, then he shall bring to Yahweh for his sin, which he has sinned, a young bull, a perfect one, as a sin offering. And he shall bring the bull to the door of the tent of appointment before Yahweh, and shall lay his hand on the bull's head, and slay the bull before Yahweh. And the anointed priest shall take some of the bull's blood, and bring it to the tent of appointment. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before Yahweh, in front of the veil of the set-apart place. And the priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the slaughter place of sweet incense before Yahweh, which is in the tent of appointment, and pour all the blood at the bull of the bull at the base of the slaughter place of the ascending offering, which is at the door of the tent of appointment. Then he takes all the fat of the bull as the sin offering, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat which is on the entrails, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them by the loins, and the appendage on the liver, which he removes with the kidneys, as it was taken from the bull of slaughtering of peace offerings, and this priest shall burn them on the slaughter place of the ascending offering. But the skin of the bull and all its flesh, with its head and legs, its entrails and dung, all of the bull, he shall bring outside the camp to a clean place where the ashes are poured out, and burn it on wood with fire, where the ashes are poured out. It is burned. And if the entire congregation of Israel strays by mistake, and the matter has been hidden from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done against any of the commands of Yahweh, which are not to be done, and shall be guilty, when the sin which they have sinned becomes known, then the assembly shall bring a young bull for the sin, and bring it before the tent of appointment. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before Yahweh, and the bull shall be slain before Yahweh. And the anointed priest shall bring some of the bull's blood to the tent of appointment, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before Yahweh in front of the veil, and put some of the blood on the horns of the slaughter place, which is before Yahweh, which is in the tent of appointment, and pour all the blood at the base of the slaughter place of ascending offering, which is at the door of the tent of appointment. Then he takes all the fat from it and shall burn it on the slaughter place, and he shall do with the bull as he did with the bull as a sin offering, so shall he do it. And the priest shall make atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them. And he shall bring the bull outside the camp and burn it. And as he burned the first bull, it is a sin offering for the assembly. When a ruler sins and by mistake has done against any of the commands of Yahweh, his Elohim, which are not to be done, and shall be guilty, or if his sin which he has sinned is made known to him, then he shall bring as his offering a buck of the goats, a male, a perfect one. And he shall lay his hands on the head of the goat and slay it at the place where they slay the ascending offering before Yahweh. It is a sin offering. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and shall put it on the horns of the slaughter place of ascending offering, and pour its blood at the base of the slaughter place of ascending offering, and burn all its fat on the slaughter place, like the fat of the slaughtering of the peace offerings. And the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin, and it shall be forgiven him. And if any being of the people of the land sins by mistake by doing against any of the commands of Yahweh, which are not to be done, and shall be guilty, or if his sin which he has sinned shall be made known to him, then he shall bring as his offering a female goat, a perfect one, for his sin which he has sinned. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering at the place of the ascending offering. And the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and put it on the horns of the slaughter place of ascending offering, and pour all the blood at the base of the slaughter place. Then remove all its fat, as fat is removed from the slaughter place of the peace offerings, and the priest shall burn it on the slaughter place for a sweet fragrance to Yahweh. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. And if he brings a lamb as his sin offering, he brings a female, a perfect one. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and slay it as a sin offering at the place where they slay the ascending offering. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it on the horns of the slaughter place of ascending offering, and pour all the blood at the base of the slaughter place. Then he removes all its fat, as the fat of the lamb is removed from the slaughtering of the peace offerings. And the priest shall burn it on the slaughter place, according to the fire offerings to Yahweh. So the priest shall make atonement for his sin that he has sinned, and it shall be forgiven him.
Okay, very good. So we want to go ahead and go back and look at a few of these things here. There's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot going on here. Let's go back.
I don't understand why Paul said through Yeshua the laws is no longer burdensome. That's some burdensome stuff.
It's a lot. It's very intricate. All of these things over here. There's a lot that goes into it. we want to look at some of these things here. If we go back up here, let me first of all, let's get our tools together here. Look at some of these words. Okay, so we want to talk about when a soul sins. When a soul sins. This translation, the scriptures version, translates this as being. That word for being is nefesh. Let me make sure that it is before I just go ahead and start saying things. Yes, nefesh, a breathing creature, right? So this is basically dealing with this chapter here is dealing with when anyone sins by mistake, unintentionally. And then it gives you the categories of when the priest does it, when the nation does it, when a ruler does it, and when the common folk do it. Okay. And so first of all, let's look at the word sin here. We see in verse number 2, if a soul, if a nefesh shall sin. That word there is kata, which is to miss. It literally means to miss. Okay. Figuratively and generally to sin, right? The word literally means to miss, and it is mostly used in this way in which it's referring to the idea of sin, right? Some type of misstep that has been made towards the Most High. Okay. And so it's interesting that we look at this word over here and its literal meaning is to miss. Okay. We see where it could be used as, being led astray or committing some sin or having some type of fault or something to offend or to be an offender. These are all various ways that it is and has been used. But the simplest way to think about it is the idea of missing the mark, right? Missing the mark. If we look here, let me pull up over here. Let's see here. Look at this in the ancient. Get out the whiteboard. Let's see here. Speaking of a kata, let's make it red. Let's make it thick. Okay, so the word kata is let me just write the Hebrew. It's a chet. It's a chet. Oh, wait a second. Let me just make this come down so it's even with the other one. It's a chet. It's a tet. And is a aleph. Okay. And so in the ancient now, the chet is a fence. All right. It's a fence. It's a barrier. It's a thing that distinguishes inside from outside, right? So we had the idea of something that makes a distinction, something that separates. Okay. The tet is a basket. Tet is a basket. It's a container. It's something that that holds things, right? It keeps things contained. All right, you can put things in it, which actually kind of seems to kind of coincide with the thought that we have with the chet, right? We have division, we have separation, distinction, right? And we have a fence which keeps things in. And then we also have this ox's head, the aleph. So with the idea of sin, right? Sin, we can think about some of these things, right? Some of these ideas that we find inside of these words here, these word pictures. We have this thing that causes distinction or separation. We have also this where kind of gives you the idea of the place where these things are, where the things that holds these things. And then we have the ox's head, which is giving you this strength, this power, this strong one, right? And so thinking about all of these things together, we have these things that are kind of this container that is holds together, that has this strength kind of against this thing that breaks it, right? The thing that separates, the thing that contains is broken by some strong thing, right? This might that is pictured with this ox's head over here. This idea where we have this thing that holds, that contains, that distinguishes, but you have this strength that's going against it. And so when we think about the idea of missing the mark, right? We're trying to do the things that are supposed to be done, but somehow we're not able to have those things be done, right? We have this container that's meant to hold things and to cause division and separation between inside and out, and somehow there's a strength that is causing the purposes of this container and this fence to not be realized. And so again, we think about this idea of missing the mark, right? We think about like a dartboard or some type of target that we're shooting at. We're shooting at this target. We have a specific thing that we're trying to hit, right? A mark that we're trying to make it to, but we're not getting there, right? And so this is the idea over here of sin. Okay. And so this over here, what we're looking at is an unintentional sin, where it seems like sin in and of itself, this kata, is in and of itself unintentional. You're actually trying to shoot for a specific place, but the scripture doesn't only just give you this idea of missing the mark, but it also gives you this other thing over here, this ignorance, this shagaga thing, right? And so when we look at that, this basically really is what kind of the thought that you get in the English is a mistake. It's inadvertent, right? It's an inadvertent transgression, right? Something that you've done unawares or unwittingly. It was an error. It was a mistake. You wasn't trying to do it. And so it's interesting when we look at these two words where we have the sin and then we have this inadvertence, this ignorance added to it, where it really kind of just intensifies the thought that we already have with sin by itself. Okay, and so it's interesting when you think about missing the mark. Okay, missing the mark. I always think about the word more. Okay, the word more, actually, here, let me pull that up for you. Let's see here. If we look over here, the word more is the Hebrew word 4175. Okay, which is an archer, right? It literally is an archer, right? An archer is a guy with the bow, right? But if he's an archer, right, he's just not somebody who shoots a bow and arrow, right? He's an archer, right? So he's an expert at shooting the bow and arrow, right? It also can mean teacher, right? It also can mean teacher, which is how we think about it. But we also think about it in terms of the archer, because when we think about the idea of sin as missing the mark, we want to be able to get to the place where we are as archers, where we're shooting these arrows straight and they're going where we're trying to put them. Right. Okay. We're trying to cause the arrow that we're shooting, we're trying to make that thing hit the bullseye, right? Every time. And so when we think about this over here, this idea, this word archer, the archer, this word that's also can be thought of as teacher, is this one who's trying to show people how to not miss the mark. Okay, to become archers and experts at archery, right, themselves, right? This word moray over here, interestingly enough, is from the word yara, which is to flow as water, right? To flow as water, right? Water was something that, it flows, right? It's alive, right? It's living. And so, again, the word more and also Torah are both derivatives of this word yara. Okay, and so the thought is now that our purpose is to move in a particular direction, the direction that the Torah is leading us to move in, to be straight shooters, if you will, to shoot towards the mark and actually not miss. Okay. And so when we look at this, over here in Leviticus, we see some interesting things over here going on. I want to first, before we go back to Leviticus, let's go over to the book of James real quick. James, and let's see, 4:17. What's that say?
To him then who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin.
Okay, right. Very good. So to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. And so it starts off by talking about the priest, right? It starts off by speaking about the priest who is actually the supposed to be over here the one that should actually be the picture of holiness, right? The priest is supposed to be the one who is the picture of set apartness, right? He is supposed to be the one who is giving you he's being the perfect example of uprightness, right? And so even though we're thinking about the idea of sinning on by mistake, right, it's something that you've done inadvertently, right? The priest, though, right, should have such a handle on what's right and what's wrong that he shouldn't be having these issues over here. And so, because an interesting thing that we see over here, because when we think about the priest coming into error, if we go back over here, it's interesting that I just noticed this over here. Let me pull this up here. The priest falling into error. Let's see here. It says, be done. The anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people. Right? If the anointed priest sins, he brings guilt on the people. Right? So it's bigger than his own self. It's not as if his actions are only affecting himself. Okay? His actions affect all of the people. And so we talked about this before, where the priest brings this young bull as his offering, a perfect one as his sin offering. And we get more information into the why of it, because when we see that this anointed priest, when he sins inadvertently, right, he brings guilt on not only himself but on the people as well, right? So this is it's almost as if when the priest sins, the whole nation sins, right? The thing that that the nation has to bring, we see that later on in the chapter, the priest has to bring, because when the priest sins, he brings guilt on all of the people. Okay. And so he has a particular responsibility about himself where he needs to be careful not to have these things happen by mistake or otherwise, because there's more at stake over here than just his own self, right? There's more at stake. Okay. Let's look at let's see what we have over here. Let's see what we have in the comments. The priests / teachers are held to a higher standard because of knowledge of the, I assume that is Torah. Reminds me of the verse, not many should become teachers. Yes. Yeah. When we think about the priests, right? The teachers, the ones who are the archers, who are supposed to be the example of, being an archer, right? Again, an archer is not just a guy who has a bow and arrow. He's the guy with the bow and the arrow, right? He's shooting that thing. You like, wow, he hitting that bullseye every time he shoot it. Like he's proficient at it, right? But he's proficient at it because he practices it, right? He practices, right? He don't just whenever he just feel like he go around like I always say, I think I love fishing because you sit and you chill and it's kind of relaxing. But I, by no means am an angler, right? By no means am I an angler, right? I fish from time to time, right? But I'm not an angler. Right, I need somebody to show me what to do in regards to this, to fishing, what to put on the hook, and all of these things. Right, the same thing we would say about an archer. Right, many people can shoot a bow and arrow, right, but those same people can't classify themselves as archers, right? And so the thing is that when we look over here at the priest is one who's, again, this picture of righteousness. He's got to walk in a particular way. And so when he sins by mistake, again, this thing falls back on everybody, right? Not just him. And so let's go over here to Luke. Look at some more scriptures over here. Luke 12. Let's see. Luke 12 and 48. Okay, what's that? What's that say right there? Luke 12 and 48.
But he who did not know, yet did what deserved flogging, shall be eaten with food.
Hold on, say that again.
But he who did not know, yet did what deserved flogging, shall be beaten with food.
Few. That says few. Okay, so just stop right there. He who did not know, yet did the thing that deserved flogging, he's still getting beat. Right? He didn't know, but he's still getting beat, but he'll get few lashes. Right? Because he didn't know. He didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Right? But we're talking about the priest over here, right? And so he's not the one who didn't know. He's the one who did know. And right? And so keep on going. Right here.
And everyone to whom much is given, from him much shall be demanded. And to whom much he has been entrusted, from him much more shall be asked.
Okay, so the one who knows, right? The one who knows, he getting much flogging, right? Because there's more demanded of him because he knows more, right? These little ones sit up here and do all types of foolishness, right? But the older ones, they can't get away with the same things that the little ones get away with, because they should know better. And so when we think about the priests, even though we're talking about something that is inadvertent, something that's done in ignorance, he is supposed to be walking in a way which is circumspect, right? He's supposed to be walking in a way where he's extra careful. He's looking around to know what it is that that he's supposed to be doing and looking out for the things that he isn't supposed to be doing, right? Just like he's in battle, right? He's going around and his head is on the swivel, looking around for things which might trip him up, right? To be sure that he doesn't fall. And again, this is why he has to bring the bull.
Yeah, bull.
Right? Because we could say, well, he's just a man. Why wouldn't he just bring what the commoners bring? Well, because he's the priest. He's the anointed priest given a particular position in life as to where he's supposed to be the example. And when he messes up, he's bringing guilt down on the nation. Okay, he's bringing it down on the people. Okay, that's the priest. Okay, so let's look at something else over here. If we go over to the book of Romans, because Yeshua is just making this general statement, right? If you don't know, and you do wrong, you still getting beat, but you just getting few lashes, right?
I can relate to that because there's a few times that I can say this, that I transgressed unknowingly, but it was brought to my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And especially once I was getting flogged and I didn't even know it. Think about it. All this stuff was happening, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because I didn't acknowledge it and I didn't repent. So it was all taking place. But then when it was brought to my attention, now that I know, I'm more responsible to do it. You feel me? So that's the things that I had to do, man. But I really understand now what Paul meant when he said the laws is no longer burdensome. Because you think of that, man. Because if we didn't have that ultimate sacrificial lamb, we would still be under the rule of going to the high priest and getting all this done. So much work needed to be done just to get atoned for sin. Yeah. That's why it's no longer burdensome. And we're saved from the guilt of sin and the sentence of death, through Yeshua. That's why we repent and die daily. That's all I want to add.
Yeah. And so when we look over here, right, we look over here in Romans chapter 3, read Romans 3, 1 and 2 over here.
What then is the advantage of the Yehudi, or what is the value of circumcision? Much in every way, because firstly, indeed, that they were entrusted with the words of Elohim.
Okay, very good over here. So, this question is asked. What's the advantage? What's the advantage of being of Yahudah? Right? What's the advantage of being these people of the Most High and circumcision? Much is the advantage in every way. Why? First of all, you've been given the words of Elohim. You've been given the words of Elohim. Okay, and so there is a responsibility to guard the Torah. Right? There's a responsibility to guard the Torah. Okay, it's a responsibility to keep it. There's a responsibility to have these distinctions made in life, so that things don't cause you to transgress. Okay, when we think about the idea of keeping it, we think about the idea of guarding it. These are all things that we think about in terms of keeping us from committing sins, right? We have a responsibility. It says that we were entrusted. What's that word mean in the Greek? I wonder. It says over here committed. Let's see this here. To have faith in, upon, or with respect to, and trust. Wait, this is the word for faith? Oh my goodness. So if we think about the idea of faith, this thing that talks about the something being solidified, or something being established, or something being immovable, right? We have been kind of attached or affixed to the oracles of the Most High. And so again, we're responsible to guard these things, right? And so when we don't do that, right, there's a problem. And so again, we look at the high priest, where he's supposed to be extra guarding it, because he's the high priest. Okay, and so even though again we look at this person who's doing this thing where he's not purposefully doing it, he shouldn't be missing, right? He shouldn't be missing. Okay. If we're following after the ways, of the Most High that he's given to us, that he's established for us, it makes it more difficult for us to accidentally do these things, right? Read this over here. I want 6 and 7 is what I want.
And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children.
Hold on. What is you going to do with them? Impress. This is taking a little sharp thing and poking it. That's what that word means. If you did that word right there, to impress them upon your children, you're taking this little sharp thing and you're poking them with it. So you taking these commands of the Most High, you prodding, you poking, you sticking them with it. And they like, and you feeling it every single time. Right? And so this is a thing that you're not you're knowing that the thing is happening, right? It's not like some high frequency subliminal thing that's going on. It's something that is knowingly happening, right, to the children. Right. And then what is it?
And shall speak of them when you sit in your house.
Okay, this is just really just going back on what it already said. This is like how you're doing it. What it say?
And shall speak of them when you sit in your house.
When you sit in the house.
When you walk by the way.
When you walk by the way.
And when you lie down.
And when you lie down.
And when you
That's all the time. That's every time of the day is incorporated in this. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, when you walking around the house, when you just walking by the way, right? And so all of the time, you're sticking the kids, right? You're poking them with this word, right? And then verse 8, what does it say?
And shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes.
Okay, so it's all over the place. You're talking about it all the time. Every waking hour got to do with you hearing some of this word that you're supposed to be doing. And then not only that, you binding it on your hand and on as frontlets in your eyes. And so when we are following after the words of the Most High in regards to how we are to guard the commands, we don't have time to be doing these things by mistake, because we sitting here, if we're doing what the Most High said for us to do, how do we got time to sin by mistake when we sitting up here talking about his word all the time, all over the place, wherever we go? We're and this is how we raising our children, right? This is how the generations is coming up.
That's what I want to implement. That is complemented by Proverbs train a child up in the way they should go, so when they get older, they don't depart from it. Then on the flip side of the coin, you got he who do not listen or heed to the Torah. You hear me? He who do not listen or he give his ear to the Torah, his prayer shall be hindered. Those are some strong warnings right there, and also strong instructions as well, because right there it tells it all right there in detail. Thank you.
Yeah. And so when we think about now over here, we're still just talking about the priests, but this really can kind of be expanded onto all of the people because of the idea that there should be a particular culture that's in place that causes one to be forever dealing with those things which are right. And so when one is walking in rightness, the way that the Most High has prescribed for it to be, it really makes it more difficult for these things to go on. Okay. All right. So let's look at some more of these things over here. Let's go down. Let's see here. If we go down, I got to go back over to Leviticus 4. Let's see here. We'll see that it takes the fat, just like we talked about last week in terms of taking the fat of the bull and the fat that covers the entrails, right? The entrails, the two kidneys, the loins, the liver, right? All of these inward parts, right? The Most High is requiring that these inward parts, these choice parts, the fat, that thing that's representative of the increase and the abundance, the thing that represents the heart and the mind, right? All of these things are offered to the Most High. Because when we think about it, if you're slipping up, you wasn't dealing with offering up your heart and your mind unto the Most High, or your abundance or your increase, right? You got off track, right? And so there was a type of separation where your whole self wasn't dedicated to the Most High. That's why you had slipped up in the first place, right? And so you have to kind of reset and rededicate yourself over here by again giving your total inward parts, the best parts, the choice parts, back to the Most High. Right? Those are the things that you put on the altar. Those are the things that you burn up, because somehow, something got off.
You said somehow something got off.
Somehow something got off because you sinned.
Right.
By mistake. You missed the mark.
Right.
You're an archer. Right? You got your bow and arrow. You're aiming for the mark, but you missed it. What happened? You wasn't practicing. Right? You didn't have your practice wasn't up, right? And so your focus was off. You wasn't paying attention to where you was trying to place the arrow, and you missed it.
Yeah, I'm going to implement something on that one. Where I had a conversation not too long ago regarding this, and as I was explaining the best of my ability, I said, well, Yeshua said, they asked the Messiah, Mashiach, what's the greatest commandment? They said the first one is to love Yahweh with all your heart, mind, and soul, and the second one is just like that. Love your neighbors, you love yourself. So I'm telling these brothers, I'm like, but what I see, brother, in all respect, I said, hope you can take this. I said, y'all doing everything right, but you missing the mark because you're not implementing that love. And then y'all wondering what's wrong. I say, y'all, the scriptures tells us you can prophesy this, you can tell this mountain to be moved, you can do this, you can do that. But if you don't have love, it's useless. It sounds like a clashing symbol. So in that retrospect, they can be sinning, unintentionally without paying attention to the greatest commandment, which caused them to do everything in vain. That's why it's very important. It's very important to pay attention to that.
Yeah, and again, you think about what the process that's done with the sin offering. There's a refocus that's involved over here, and so we're talking again. If we think about this in terms of the high priest, who's supposed to be the one who's showing the way of righteousness, right? But somehow the thing that he's supposed to be exemplifying, he misses on. And so somehow he got off track. And so we have, we're able to look out here and see these people who are supposed to be the examples. They're supposed to be the ones who, people look to, to know, what righteousness looks like, right? But when these ones are not properly guarding the commands and walking in the way that the Most High would have for them to be walking in, right? You leave a kind of a way, you leave an opening for you to misplace your inward parts, right? We talked about the liver and the kidney, literally giving us the idea of our heart and our mind, right? When we allow things to creep in and pull our heart and our mind away from the Most High, right? At that point, it's easy to miss the mark. Right at that point, it's easy to miss the mark when we lose our focus on the one, who is the Almighty, right? And so, again, thinking about this priest, again, he has to bring this bull, and he does these things over here. But I wanted to go back now. We see. Okay, so when we see over here, he takes all of those inward parts. He takes the inward parts and he gives those to the Most High, right? Those things are all burned up, right? But verse 11, but the skin and his flesh and his head and his legs and his entrails and his dung, right? All of that stuff, that's not part of the sacrifice. He only wants that those inward parts, right? Because that's the thing that caused the problem in the first place. Again, remember, part of this process is the sinner, the one who sins, takes his hand and places his hand on the animal. And so when he does that, that is saying that he's allowing for this animal to be a representative of himself. And so when we think about what the offering is over here, and we see that the Most High only wants those inwardmost parts, those are the parts that are being given to the Most High, we can deduce from that the thing that caused him to go astray in the first place was the fact that he wasn't able to give his inward parts to the Most High. And so the rest of it is just the result, right? So he don't really care about the effects. He cares about the cause of it being those inward parts. So he don't want the head and the skin and the legs and the entrails, and especially not the dung, right? Take that somewhere else and burn that out there. That all that stuff don't got nothing to do with this sin offering, right? Take that stuff and burn it in the what is essentially the trash dump. Take that to the place where you burn stuff outside the camp at, and take this over there to those places. We want this stuff over here that is that signifies what it is that you're giving back to the Most High. Okay, so let's look at this over here real quick. Let's see what we see over here. If we go up here to Hebrews, let's see here, 13 and start reading at verse, let's see, 11.
For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the set apart place by the high priest for sin are burned outside the camp. And so Yeshua also suffered outside the gate and to set apart the people with his own blood. Let us then go to him outside the camp, bearing his reproach, for we have no lasting city here, but we seek the one coming. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a slaughter offering of praise to Elohim, that is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name.
Okay, very good. So it's interesting. We see over here kind of the parallel that we see with Yeshua, where he was this sacrifice that happened, and the sacrifice that was given, right, was this thing that, as it says over here in these verses, right, he too also suffered outside the gate, right, to set apart the people with his own blood, right? So we see that there was kind of a separation, right? There was a thing that had to go on with his blood, but also it wasn't like how when we look at some of these other things where the whole entire thing goes on inside of the Holy of Holies. But even part of this sin offering, even though there was a separation where part of it was over here and part of it was over there, we're still able to see how that kind of points us still to Yeshua, where it's not all done over here at the altar. Even though that was a part that was outside the camp, it's still a significant part of what's going on in the redemption of the souls of those who are believers in Yeshua. And so it's interesting that we're able to see this thing that we always think about in terms of what it is that Yeshua has done for us, with being the our offering for sin. We're able to even see with the sin offering how you have this separation where we have the of it that he's done in terms of the giving of his blood, right? And then also kind of that picture of that separation of, part of the process being something that's in the holy place, and another part that's connected to outside of the camp. Okay, so when we look at another part of this thing that's interesting is that when we look at the burnt offering, the burnt offering that we talked about from the first chapter, it talks about the blood being sprinkled round about the altar. So let's go back over here. If we look at let's see, start reading at verse 3 over here.
If his offering is an ascending offering of the herd, let him bring a male, a perfect one. Let him bring it at the door of the tent of appointment for his acceptance before Yahweh. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the ascending offering, and it shall be accepted on the behalf to make atonement for him. And he shall slay the bull before Yahweh, and the sons of Aaron the priests shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood all around the slaughter place, which is at the door of the tent of appointment.
Okay, so when you have this burnt offering, you take this blood and you sprinkle the blood all around the slaughter place, right? All around that altar that was the big the holy fire pit over there. Okay. But when we look over here back in chapter 4, there's this other thing that happens over here. Let's see here. Chapter 4, let's see where it says is that 7 kidneys, entrails. Oh wait, I missed it. Let's see here. Oh, here it goes, verse 6. It says that the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before Yahweh in front of the veil of the set apart place. Okay, so we see over here the tent of appointment. When he brings the thing to the tent of appointment where you're talking about where the altar is. But when it says over here, he's taking this blood and he's sprinkling it 7 times before the front of the veil of the set apart place, right? He's not going into the most holy place, but he's right before it. But that's kind of like over there where it tells you, right? It says, let's see. It says in verse 7 right there.
And the priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the slaughter place of sweet incense before Yahweh.
Oh, he says it right there. The horns of the slaughter place or the altar of incense. Right? The altar of incense. So he's taking a little blood and he's putting it on the altar of incense. Right before they just took the blood and just spilled it by the altar of sacrifice. But with this priest now, the priest went and he took this blood from the sin offering and he takes this blood and he sprinkles it 7 times, right? On the not even the place where the offerings were done. Don't do that. He does it on the place where the incense is, right? It's not even the same altar. It's a different one, right? On the horns of the slaughter place of sweet incense, the altar of incense. Okay, so first of all, when we look at this, let's look at this here. That was verse 6. He says, let's see, 7 times. 7 times. That word there is Sheba. Sheba or Sheba. Okay. Which means, let's see, it's a primitive cardinal number 7 as a sacred full one, right? It gives the idea of something being full, a week. 7, let's see here. It is from this word here, Shaba, which is to be complete. Okay, to 7 oneself, that is to swear, right? As if by repeating a declaration 7 times, right? And so when we think about this idea over here with this thing that the priest is doing, it's almost as if he's in this act of doing this, bringing this sin offering and kind of rededicating himself and his most importantly his inward parts back to the Most High. He's also kind of doing this this almost this blood oath thing that's going on, because this word over here that's translated as seven, is the word that is used whenever you make swearings, right? Whenever you swear on a thing or make an oath, right? And so he's doing this thing 7 times where he's back and he's re-solidifying this thing, this type of separation that he created as a result of this sin that he has done, this unintentional sin that he has done. He takes this blood and he does this extra thing where he touches this blood on the altar of incense and he sprinkles it 7 times, right? He causes the entire connection to be completed back with the Father. And so I was thinking about the fact that when we think about Yeshua, who is indeed the high priest, right, after the order of Melchizedek, right, as a where we don't see where Yeshua is bringing any sin offerings for himself, right, because he lived this perfect life, right? He lived this life that was without sin. And so when we see over here, it's interesting. This is something I was thinking about. If we go over here to something that he says, let's see, it's in John, Yochanan 19 and verse 30. He says, read that verse 30 right there.
So when Yeshua took the sour wine, he said, "It has been accomplished." And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit.
It has been accomplished. It has been completed. Right? It is complete. It is, let's see here. That's verse 30, says it's finished in the English. That word there is taleo, which is to be complete. Okay? It's complete, which actually is the same word that we see when we think about the amount of times that the priest sprinkled the blood, the 7 times. We think about what it is that Yeshua did over here. What's the thing that's finished? What's finished? What's finished with what Yeshua has did over there? Because if we think about what it is that Yeshua has to do in terms of, from a prophetic standpoint, all the things that he would be responsible for doing for us, from a prophetic standpoint, there's still things. So when he said it is finished, what is it that he could even be talking about over here? Because there's still other things that he has to have done. But when we think about the fact that Yeshua over here, with this thing that he's doing in terms of being being the Lamb of Elohim, and whenever we look in the fact that he gives his blood as a sin sacrifice for his people, we're able to see that this blood oath that Yeshua is bringing forth right, has been taken and is done, and that's over. The thing that Yeshua did, the spilling of his blood, that's when he literally dies, when he says it's finished, right? His blood being spilled past tense, right? He has finished the thing that need to be done in terms of his blood being spilled, right? Indeed, the Lamb of Elohim to the fullness, right over there, when he dies.
You know, a lot of Christian apologists misinterpret that passage right there as all things being fulfilled.
Yeah, that's just.
I had a deep discussion with one of the brothers. I ain't gonna say his name, which I have already done, but I ain't gonna say it today. And I had to go over and over and over and over to explain to him exactly what you're explaining now. You know, that this does not have nothing to do, you know, all things have been fulfilled.
Mm-mm.
But what
because all things weren't.
Yeah, it wasn't. So it was accomplished. He was the sacrificial lamb, just like when we went back in the OT and we seen all that had to take place in order for a high priest to atone Israel for their sins as well as his own. This is what he was talking about. You know, he took the sorrow and said, it has been accomplished. You know?
Yeah.
So the atonement has been made.
Yeah.
Boom. You remember when he said, and I manifested your name to those you've given me. I've done the work you sent me to do. Now, oh Father, glorify myself back to yourself as we were before the world was. Another retrospect is saying, hey, I'm done. I'm ready to come back. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's we're not able to understand kind of how the so-called Old Testament and the so-called New Testament kind of connect. You know, we miss out on things. You know, if I have something in my mind that, you know, he finished the Old Testament, and so when he said he's finished, and when he said that the law won't be done away with till all's fulfilled. And he said it's finished over here, so that must be it all being fulfilled. Like if I'm only thinking about it from a quote unquote New Testament standpoint, I miss all of the things. Understanding that, you know, there's more for the one that we understand as Yeshua. There's more for him to be done at this point. So we got to think about what is it that's finished. The only thing that's finished is the fact that he's dead. And he's giving his blood over here, right? He still got to go back to the Father. He still got to send back the Ruach HaKodesh, right? There's a whole bunch. He still got to raise on the third day. There's all kinds of things that he then finished doing over here in John 19 verse 30. But there is something that he did do, and he never gonna do again, and that's spill his blood and die. He did that once and for all, and right there, it's finished. Okay. All right, so let's go back over these people. These people, you know, what happens is they never had somebody to show them how to shoot the arrow straight, right? And they keep on trying to hit the target, but they miss him, right? Because they don't have a reference point, which is the so-called Old Testament, right? They have this New Testament thought process,
Gideon Bible,
which is yeah, the half a Bible. It's not even half; it's like a third.
It's one of the Bibles what they just want you to read.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back over to Vayikra, 4th chapter. 13th verse, and let's see. Okay, so it says here, read 13 again for me.
And if the entire congregation of Israel strays by mistake.
Oh wait, yeah. So now we're talking about the entire congregation, right? Before it was dealing with the priest, although when we read this, we see it's the actual same consequences. But go ahead.
And the matter has been hidden from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done against any of the commands of Yahweh, which are not to be done, and shall be guilty.
And shall be guilty. Right? And so this is talking about the entire congregation. And so we got the entire congregation, the whole nation, right? They do something by mistake, they're guilty. Just like if the priest does something by mistake, the guilt is on all of the people. And so we see over here, if the whole people's doing it or just a high priest doing it, you still get the same results, which is the guiltiness being upon the people. So I want to look at this a little bit here, because we're talking about these people that shall be guilty, which is asham. Asham, to be guilty, by implication to be punished or perish, to become or to made desolate, destroy, guilty, offend, trespassive. Okay. And so when we think about this now, when we look at this thing over here, one thing that we have to think about is the fact that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the people are aware of the sin. When they become aware, then it's necessary for them to do something about it. But when they have sinned, they shall be guilty. Just like when the priest sins, then he shall be guilty. And then they become aware, and then there's something that needs to be done as a result of it. And so, this is something that we have to think about, because, your knowledge or ignorance of a thing doesn't excuse you from being guilty of the thing. It's interesting that we think about the idea of trespassing. If I have some land, right? My land is mine because there's borders, whether they're visible borders or invisible borders, they're still my borders. There's something that says this land from this marker to that marker is mine. And so once you cross over into my borders, you're trespassing. You may be inadvertently trespassing, but you're trespassing nonetheless. And so this is what we have to understand in terms of this idea of guilt, or being guilty, right? Or guiltiness, is that it doesn't matter if you know that you're doing something that's wrong or not. It doesn't matter. You're still doing it.
The scripture does tell us man is without excuse.
Man is without excuse. And that's why I'm saying, if we think about it in terms of property, it's an easier way to think about it, because it don't matter if you realize that you're on private property or not. If you're there, it don't make the property not private anymore just because you didn't know that it was private. Right? There may be a posted sign that you just didn't happen to see, but you can't sit up there and say, I'm not trespassing. Right. Well, you are trespassing. Maybe it's just inadvertently doing it, right? But you're still guilty, though. And so the same thing is true when we think about the borders that the Most High creates. The Most High has created a particular set of borders and boundaries. That if you get on the other side of those borders and boundaries, then you're guilty. And even here, when we're talking about the idea of sinning unintentionally, you're sinning, but it's unintentional, but you're still guilty. And so it talks about at the time that you find out that you've done it, then now you got to do something about it. But you didn't just become guilty when you found out about it. You was already guilty.
That's like when you're talking about that private property, and I come out and I tell you, hey, you know, you're on private property. Did you see that sign right? No, sir. If you don't move, now you know, and there's consequences behind that. You're responsible for that. You got to suck that up. Now, I done ran to a lot of people who don't like hearing the truth so much that they will turn the ear away from them. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that because then I'm being responsible for it. Man, you're responsible for not listening. You know, what part you're not getting? Or I'll get that. You know what? I'm not perfect yet for that. I'm going to wait till I get myself together. Brother, you're going to be waiting in hell. Yeah. You're going to be waiting in hell when that happens, you know, because it ain't going to happen.
That is a very important component. And you run into so many people who might say, well, yeah, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. But, you know, I got this situation over here that I got to, you know, first. I got to take care of this situation over here, right? Yeah. And then when I get that squared away, then I'll go ahead and do what I know that I'm supposed to do. Right. But over here, the thing that we're talking about over here is saying that you're guilty now. Right. You're guilty now already. So it's not as if you're able to go and do all of those things. And then it's like if you was kids and playing it tag and you say time out. Right. You can't be tagged whenever you say time out. A lot of these ain't no timeouts over here. Time you can't call timeout. Ain't no timeout. You're it. Nope, you're it. You're it. Okay, so you're guilty. There's nothing that can be done about it. Now, when you find out about it, then now there's a thing that you need to be doing to resolve the issue. Right. But then when you don't do that, now you're compounding the things. Because it's one thing to say that I've done a thing that I become guilty of doing, and I didn't know that I did it. But once I know that I did it and then I don't take care of it, now it's like how the police be sitting up here trumping up your charges. Like it's you're adding, resisting. Yeah. You're adding to the charges now because you didn't know. That's fine. You're still guilty, but you didn't know. But now that you do know, now do something about it. But when you don't do something about it, now you're adding to your situation.
You know, I talk to a lot of, frequently throughout my weeks, the 6 days, I always talk to a lot of pastors, you know, claiming to be pastors who actually run churches and stuff. But, you know, me, I'll put them on blast. I have no problem. But I do it in a respectful manner. And like I was telling them, that y'all all seem to be following under the cash flow dollar doctrine. You know, crypto dollar. I said that he was sitting up there telling, you know what? See, Satan wants you to keep the law because he know then you will sin. But the law been done away with. So there is no sin. I'm like, and I'm telling these so-called spiritual giants, man, y'all don't hear or read between the lines. Satan wants you to keep the law. That's wrong. He don't want you to keep the law because y'all are adamantly teaching lawlessness that this Jesus nailed them to the cross. And I said, well, if that was the case, somebody ran up on that tree and snatched that nail out and said tithing, because y'all still doing that big time. You know, I said, but nevertheless, we know that's not true.
Yeah, it's a shame that we have so many so many people who say that they follow the same book that we follow, where they have these teachings that are kind of diametrically opposed to what the Bible actually says. Um, the Most High, He's made a way that He wants for those that follow after Him to do. There's a way for His followers to be, and once you get outside of that, you become guilty, right? Just period, point blank. And so when we look over here, this is that. This is that, right? Where you have His people who have gone astray unawares, right? The big thing to get out of this is understanding that your knowledge of the sin isn't the thing that causes you to be guilty. The thing that causes you to be guilty is the actual sin, right? And so this is the thing that we have to be able to understand over here, which is a very important thing. Okay. And so let's see here. When we look over here now, again with these people now, the people. Now let's think about this, because when we think about the people transgressing, or I should say actually trespassing, right? Because we're talking about sin, not necessarily transgression, right? Which would be another layer of sin, but we're talking about trespassing, which brings about guilt. Think about what has to go on in order for the entire congregation to stray by mistake. After all the things that we talked about in terms of the priest, in terms of the priest being the epitome of holiness and being the one that shows the people the way in which that they are to be when he falls, right? There's a problem, right? When the priest makes that misstep and goes into some unintentional sin, you're seeing a example of the priest's loss of focus. But when we look over here and see where it's talking about the entire congregation of Israel strays by mistake. Let me see something real quick, because this over here, this seems like, let's see what this is. If the whole, it says the whole. I just don't want this to say coal. Please don't say coal. Says it.
Coal.
It's the whole congregation. It's all of the people, right? How can all of the people go astray by mistake? What's going on when the entire congregation goes there's the only way that this happens is a problem has to happen, right? This is not just some ordinary circumstances that can happen in order for the entire congregation of Israel to stray by mistake. And so again, when we look at this and we see that this is this great sacrifice that needs to be brought, the most expensive sacrifice needs to be brought, because we're talking about the error of the whole nation, where there are some things that are in place that are off, that causes everybody to be wrong. right? I could see it just a couple people over here or a couple people over there. That's one thing. But we talking about all of the people, right? There's some serious discrepancies in how things are functioning when all of the people are astray. And again, this causes me to think about the whole idea of the way that the Most High calls for Israel to behave is in a way that is set up in such a way where these types of things can be preventable. Right? If Israel's functioning in the way that Israel's supposed to be functioning in, then these types of things shouldn't be happening. Right? If all the parents is just all the time sitting around just talking to all of the kids about the laws all the time, when they stand up, when they sit down, when they walk around, when they go to bed, when they wake up, stabbing them with the word, how's the entire congregation going astray by mistake? And so again, we see this whole thing where there is a necessity for there to be kind of this refocus, right? Because something went astray, and that's why there's error in the first place, right? Something went astray, right? Something's out of whack when the whole thing is coming up wrong. Again, we're not talking about just one or two people, right? It says the entire, all the people, right? Something's off where it's necessary for all the people to refocus. And so again, we have this same thing that happens with the idea of somebody's supposed to be watching, right? The matter has been hidden from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done against any of the commandments of the Most High, which are not to be done. They'll be guilty. Okay. And so again, we have to be in such a way where, we are guarding, as the word says, guarding the commands of the Most High, so that we don't get into the situation like it's describing over here with the whole congregation. Okay. All right, let's keep on going over here. Let's see when we go down. And again, the what we want to kind of focus on is the fact that you not knowing that is wrong don't excuse you from the guilt. Okay. All right, so let's keep on going over here. Let's keep on going. Let's go down. Wait, I thought I put that on here because I want to talk about a little bit. Let's see. I think that is. Let me find it real quick. Oh, I can just search it. Let me find this real quick. If I go over here, let me put this on. Let me find it in the King James so I know what it says there. Here. Oh, here it goes. Here, read this right here. Acts 17 and verse 30. Let's see here. Yeah.
In the times of this ignorance, God winked at, but not commandeth all men
Now.
everywhere to repent.
You said,
But now.
now commands all men everywhere to repent. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out when is this happening? When did this happen? And the times of this ignorance Elohim winked at.
I love that.
But now commands all men everywhere to repent.
That's very important.
When is he winking at this stuff? What we talking about over here is the fact that he ain't winking on it. Okay? What is this talking about over here? So basically, ignorance is not bliss. No, ignorance is not bliss. No, it is not. Ignorance here. Let's see this. Ignorance. So basically, ignorance is not bliss according to the Most High. No, it's not bliss. Right? You're still guilty. Right? And so we looking over here where this says at the times of this ignorance, Elohim winked at, but now commands all men everywhere to repent. What's he talking about? Let's go up some. Here, start reading at here, let me see. Start reading at verse 20. Just read at 20. Hold on. Where's there? Here, that's 26.
And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, having ordained beforehand the times and the boundaries of their dwelling, to seek the master, if at least they would reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move, and also and are, as also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Now then, since we are not the offspring of Elohim, we should not think that the Elohim is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by the skill and the thought of man. Truly then, having overlooked these times of ignorance, Elohim now commands all men everywhere to repent.
Okay, very good. So when we look at this now, we see understanding the audience, who's being spoken to over here. He's sitting up here talking to these people who may not necessarily even be Israel, right? These people who, are these people who are, they're used to having these various idols of gold and silver and stone and all of these things, right? But when we see now commands all men everywhere to repent, because the Most High, he's about his people. And unfortunately for the whole world, I would say that unfortunately for the whole world, now the Most High is making his goodness be available to you. And so I'm saying unfortunately, because now where he's focused on his people, right? Now he's also being focused on you. And where so in terms of where it talks about this idea of winking at people's ignorance, he never winked at his own people's ignorance, right? We're looking at over here where he's giving you the commands over here and saying, when you sin and you don't even know that you sin, you're guilty. And then when you find out about it, then you do something about it. The only ignorance that he winked at is these other people, these other nations that he wasn't even dealing with. But there's going to come a time, there's going to become, what do verse 31 say?
Because he has set a day on which he is going to judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed, having given proof of this to all by raising him from the dead.
He talking about the judgment of everything. That's when everything gonna be judged. Not just Israel gonna be judged, but everything gonna be judged. And so when we think about this idea of winking at ignorance in terms of the Most High dealing with his people, he ain't never winked at no ignorance. He telling the people that you people who out here following these other gods and all of this stuff, he winked at y'all's ignorance because he wasn't messing with y'all. But you getting ready to get the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah, man.
And you gonna have to either get in line or you getting this judgment.
Shape up or what?
Shape up.
Get shipped out.
Or ship out. And so when we look over here, and again looking back at the what we're looking at in Leviticus, when you sin unintentionally, you're guilty when you do it. And then when you find out about it, now it's necessary for you to do something about it. Okay. What do we see? What do we have over here? Let's see here. Some of these comments, they didn't get prodded when they rose up, when they slept along. Yes, exactly. The other nations, they didn't know. They didn't get all of the things, right? They didn't know. His people, yes, his people should know. That's Israel. The people should know. And so that's why we got the situation that we have even to this day, is that they wasn't our fathers wasn't doing the things. They wasn't sitting up here talking to the children and prodding them with the word of the Most High when they walked and when they sat down and when they got up and when they went to bed and when they woke up, right? And putting these things all over the place. And so now we have this time where, Yeshua is making himself known to the nations as to where it's time for everyone everywhere to repent. Because even though the oracles of the Most High wasn't given to you, they were still given. And so even though there is a way that the Most High likes for his people to be and for his people to act, it's necessary now for you to get to know the Creator and the Sustainer of all things, so that you are able to walk in his will and in his way. We can't sit up here and say and claim ignorance, right? Because truly then he overlooked your ignorance because you wasn't part of his people, right? But now when he opened up the door for you to come in, those excuses are no longer good for you. They really wasn't good for you then. Right? Because his righteousness don't change. It stays the same. And so this idea of, until I pledge my allegiance to the Most High, I don't got to worry about it. I'm gonna sit out here and live my life and do whatever I gotta do, and then I'm gonna get serious about this word. I'm gonna get serious, but just tomorrow I'm gonna do it. Well, guess what? You guilty today. Okay, you guilty today, and so you putting off tomorrow what you could do today is only hurting your own self. And right, we got to know this, right? Because looking at these scriptures over in Leviticus chapter 4 is letting us know that when we sin, when the soul sins unintentionally, you guilty right now. You guilty when you do it. And then there's something for you to do once you find out, right? You guilty right now. You separated from the Most High right now. You done infringed upon his property right now. And so the only thing that there is for you to do now is to what? To turn around, to repent, and walk towards righteousness, right? You have trespassed. You've trespassed against the Most High. You've done something that he don't want for you to have done. You've been doing it your whole entire life. But now he wants for you to turn around and leave those wicked ways behind and attach yourself to the one who's able to cause you to be in right standing with the Most High, who is Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay? And so it's necessary for us to understand and know that the Most High is not sitting up here saying that you're fine because you never said that you was mine. And so I'm not going to judge you based on that. That's not how it works. It don't work that way. You know how it works is that when you sin and you don't know that what you've done is sin, you're guilty. And whether you know it or not, there's something for you to do as a result of that. Okay. And so we have to get to the place where we understand that the Most High has indeed made a way for those who are in their ignorance to come to the Father, and that way is repentance and accepting the blood sacrifice that is made for us by Yeshua. Okay. There's a time that's coming, as it says over in Acts chapter 17. That day is set and it's coming, right? The calendar, we don't know what day that is, but as far as the Most High, the calendar, the appointment for judgment is made, right? And we creeping up on it, whether we know when it is or if we don't. And we can't say when that day get here, oh man, I didn't even know that you was about to judge me on my life. I didn't even know I was supposed to attach myself to the Redeemer of mankind, so that I can be free from these things that bind me, which is called sin in the flesh. I didn't even know that. You're not gonna be able to sit up here and say you didn't know, right? Because the knowledge of the Redeemer has gone across from one end of the earth to the other. And so, this idea that we're able to be free from the consequences of sin based on our ignorance has never been something that's spoken about in the scriptures, right? Because we see over here in Leviticus chapter 4 where the people, his very own people, they wasn't getting off, right? It says that you was guilty, and then after you find out, now there's something to be done. Okay, so there's the last component that we want to think about. Let's see. He talks about them at the end of each one, actually, whether it's the priest or the nation or the chiefs or the common person. But if we just go down to the last verse, because he says it there for sure. Let's see here, Leviticus 4. Okay. Here, read this last sentence here in this verse here.
Fat of the lamb is removed.
No, just read this last verse.
So the priest shall make atonement for his sin that he has sinned, and it shall be forgiven him.
Okay, so the only way that your sin can be forgiven is that your sin is atoned for by this blood that the priest is sacrificing over here. And so this is what we have to remember. This part is a key component to the situation, right? All of that happens, right? So the priest shall make an atonement for the sin that he has sinned, and it shall be forgiven him. So, in other words, the only way that you're able to get this forgiveness is through this act that brings about atonement. Here, let me do this real quick, because I always like to look at this word because the picture is so telling over here. Let's erase this here. Okay. Atonement, or to atone, is kafar, which is a kaf, which is a pay, and it is a resh. Okay. So in the ancient, we have the kaf is a open palm. It is the pay is the open mouth. And the resh, of course, is the man's head. Our race always looks funny to me. Okay, so when we see the race, okay, so we think so kafar is a covering, is to cover. When we think about the idea of atonement. Atonement is the cancellation of the debt that is owed or due against the person, right? That cancellation of debt. It's the appeasement of wrath, right? When we sin, the Most High says, you owe me your life, right? The wages of sin is death. If you sin, there needs to be some life that is given so that I don't take yours, right? And so there's a wrath that's ready to be pronounced against you. And so it's necessary for there to be this hand that comes over and covers up the mouth that's pronouncing the wrath against the head of this man over here, right? So the hand comes and covers up the mouth. This mouth got some wrath that is about to speak over you, right? But then his hand comes and covers it so that the wrath is not spoken over your head, and so that you don't die. And so the only way that you're able to have this covering be done on your behalf is by the sacrifice that's made through the priest. And so again, we think about Yeshua being this our high priest, right? He is our high priest after the order of Melchizedek, right? He is the one who has shed his blood for us so that we're able to be freed from the wrath of the Most High. And so if we look over here, we'll look at a couple of things as we begin to close down here. Let's get rid of this thing over here. Let's see. If we go over to Ephesians, let's go over to Ephesians real quick. Because when we think about this, you know, even when we think about it from the perspective of ancient Israel, there was a way that those people back then could have not been walking and sinning by mistake, right? Let alone on purpose, but just even by mistake. There was a way put in place by the Most High so that they was able to actually walk in rightness, right? And so that's why it's so interesting when we look at these sacrifices that are given, that you know, the Most High needs for his people to be able to be focused on him. Because if we focus on him, we don't have these slip ups, right? We don't have these little things that happen, you know, that we're not aware of, because we're focused on him and we have our hearts and our minds dedicated to him, and we're walking in a way that is in agreement with what he would have for us to be doing. And so let's look over here real quick at Ephesians 4. Start reading at verse 17 right there.
So this I say and witness in the Master, that you should no longer walk as the nations walk, in the futility of their mind.
Okay, just stop right there. So the only way that we get to the place where when we sit up here and we sin by mistake, if we're sitting up here getting caught up with being how the nations be. I mean, if we walk like the nations walk, then we can sit up here and be doing the things that they like and then accidentally kind of do something that's contrary to the Most High. But if we're walking according unto the way that the Master has for us to be, then we shouldn't be doing that. Right? We should be only just walking in righteousness. He said, so this I say, and witness in the Master. You, as being a follower of the Master, you shouldn't be walking the way that the nations is walking.
Yeah. They kill me when they like, I got a master plan. But your master plan doesn't involve the master. You know, and they expect it to work.
We have to be walking the way that the Most High has for us to be walking, through the example of his son Yeshua. Here, keep on going. Verse 18.
Having been darkened in their understanding, having been estranged from the life of Elohim.
That's the nations. The nations is the ones that's been darkened in their understanding, having been estranged from those are the ones, right? So how are we gonna walk like them? If we walk like the nations, we're guaranteed to get into some kind of sin that we don't know about, because we're gonna be walking like the nations. Okay, keep on going.
Because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of the heart.
When we are servants of Yeshua, right? These things ain't our reality over here, right? He's saying what we ain't supposed to be doing. Keep on going. 19.
Who have become callous, have given themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness with greediness.
This is the opposite. It's opposite day over here. All these things that he's saying, We don't do these things. We do the opposite of these things, right? We not walking around callous and in ignorance and with a hard heart. We walking around with a soft heart of flesh, right? That he put his spirit up in that causes us to walk in his commandments, right? Not after these ways of the nations, right? The nations, when we walk after the nations, that's how we get caught up and start doing things that's contrary to the Most High by mistake. Because that's the only thing we're talking about right now is sinning by mistake. There's other ways to sin, but we're not talking about those right now. We talking about sinning by mistake. And the only way we get into these ways of sinning by mistake is when we sit up here and lose focus on the Most High and start walking after the nations. What did it say over here? What did it say in the comments over here?
Kadar
This says, let's see here. True wisdom and knowledge comes from Yah. The other nations are supposed to marvel after us because of where we get our knowledge and wisdom from. That talks about that in Deuteronomy chapter 4. The nations are supposed to look at us and say, wow, what kind of Elohim do he serve? Not the other way around. But when it gets to be the other way around, guess what we do? We sit up here and we sin by mistake. Because we sitting up here losing focus and causing for our heart and our mind. Look at the things that we see over here. It says, you shall no longer walk as the nations walk in the futility of their mind because of the hardness of their heart. Right? Remember, the kidney and the liver is both giving us the idea of the heart and mind that we're supposed to be dedicated to the Most High. And when we sin by mistake, we got to offer these parts of the animal back to the Most High. Why? Because we probably done fell into the futility of our own mind and allow for our heart to get calloused and hard. Okay, keep on going. Let's see where you start off. Oh, verse 20.
But you have not so learned, Messiah.
You didn't learn that thing that you're doing from Messiah. You didn't learn having a hard heart, this callous heart, and walking in the futility of your mind. You didn't learn that from Messiah. What'd that say? 21.
If indeed you have heard him and were taught by him as truth is in Yeshua, that you put off with regard to your former behavior, the old man being corrupted according to the desires of the deceit.
Okay, this is stuff that you supposed to have got rid of. You put that stuff off, right? You put that off. That's your former behavior. That's how you used to be, right? When we talk about this idea of walking in newness of life, that's your old man. Right? Your old man. You killed him. You drowned him to death in that water whenever you got immersed. And he stayed down there and the new one came up. And so again, when we think about this in the context of what we're thinking about, something goes off. Something goes astray when you get into these things of trying to walk right and not being able to do it, right? Because when we truly are walking right and trying to walk right, the Most High, Yeshua, is able, he's more than able to do over and abundantly above whatever it is we could ask or think. And so if all we want to just do is just be pleasing to the Most High, he can cause us to be pleasing to the Most High. Of course he can, but we have to dedicate ourselves to him, right? We look over here. This is what he taught us. It said, if indeed you have heard him and were taught by him as truth is in Yeshua. If you heard from him and was taught by him, then you not sitting up here in all of this uncleanness and greediness, right? And indecency and hardness of heart and futility of mind. Right? You not in none of that stuff. Let's see, where you end off at?
23.
Go ahead.
And to be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the renewed mind, which was created according to Elohim in righteousness and set apartness of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, having put off the false, speak truth each one with his neighbor, for we are members of one another.
Okay, very good. So there is a way that we are supposed to be. And we not out here, generally speaking, out here acting in ways that's contrary to the place and the way that Yeshua has placed us in. Right? If we're following after the ways that's been established for us to be in, there's checks and balances that are incorporated in the scriptures that help for us to just stay and be the way for that he wants for us to be. Right? Where we don't have to be out here sinning by mistake. Right? All we got to do is just allow for the spirit that he placed inside of us to be the thing that leads and guide us, and not our own futile mind and our own. I like saying that, and I like the hardness, yeah, the hardness of our heart. Right? All of these things are former ways, and when we think about what is exemplified in the sin offering and the kind of refocusing that we see within it in terms of the offerer giving his the fat and the inward parts and rededicating and re-offering those innermost parts to the Most High as his sin offering, it helps us to understand that the Most High wants for us to be transformed on the inside, and for the things that are inside of us to be the things that are given over to the Most High and to be led by the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the inside, and for our influence to come from inside of us, not from outside of us. Right? The stuff that's outside, he said, take that outside the camp and burn it with the trash.
Yeah.
Because the external influence, that's what you was allowing you to. That's what you was allowing you, allowing to influence you when the whole entire congregation sinned by mistake. That means nobody wasn't doing the right thing, right? And so we have to allow for the Ruach HaKodesh to do its part inside of us, which when we look back and we see the things that the Most High has put in place, he has put these things in place that allows us to be able to lean on his strength, not our own strength. Our own strength is going to get us caught up, but on to lean on his strength and the things that we're taught by Yeshua himself, and put off these former ways, our old behavior, the old man, right? And not be led by the desires of our deceitful heart. What, right? But to be renewed in the spirit of our mind. Okay, one last thing we want to look at over here is in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Let's see, start reading at the first verse here.
Therefore, having this service, even as we received compassion, we do not lose heart.
We do not lose heart, right? We don't lose heart, right? Because again, we're talking about these inward parts that we've given unto the Most High. How do we lose heart? How do we become weak in heart when we've dedicated our hearts to the one whose name is a strong tower? Right? If we had to depend on our own selves to sit up here and try to figure things out ourselves, that will be one thing. But we have a transformed heart. We have a renewed heart that's been given to us, that we have this Ruach HaKodesh that he puts on the inside of our heart, and he writes his law, statutes, and commands on our heart. Right. And so he's saying over here, having this servant, even as we have received compassion, we cannot lose heart. Keep on going. Verse 2.
But have renounced the secret ways of shame, not walking in craftiness nor falsifying the word of Elohim, but by the manifestation of the truth, recommending ourselves to every human conscience in the sight of Elohim.
Okay, so stop right there. So we have renounced the secret ways of shame, right? You could say renounce the secret ways of guilt. Okay, guilt is that thing that comes upon you as a result of trespassing, right? And so we're able to renounce those ways of shame and guilt because we're not walking in craftiness, right? We're not up here falsifying the will and the ways of the Most High. We're walking in light. Verse 3.
And indeed, if our good news has been veiled, and it has been veiled in those who are perishing.
Okay, so if we are walking in craftiness, right, and falsifying the word of the Most High, we're indeed veiling this good news of the Father, this good news of Yeshua, right? And so when we do this, we're literally causing people to perish and to remain in a state that can only lead to perishing, right? And so when we think about it, as those who are followers of the Master Yeshua, when we don't when we fail to walk out our faith in a real way, we're not only hurting ourselves, but we're hurting those who could potentially look at us and be turned to truth as a result of us. He said, and indeed, if our good news be veiled, when he says be veiled, that means is we're not shining our light because we've allowed some darkness to creep in. It's being veiled from those who are already perishing. And they just gonna keep on perishing because you are sitting up here allowing your light to be overcome by darkness. And so when we think about this, it's just like thinking about what we've been talking about in terms of sinning by mistake. Sinning by mistake is you who are light allowing your light to be dimmed and for darkness to be the prominent thing for however long it takes for that sin, that trespass to manifest itself. But again, we look at 2 Corinthians 4:3. When you do that, it says that good news is being veiled from those who are currently perishing. And so you putting yourself in a bad situation, and you are putting others also, you're keeping others also in a bad situation because they're already there, right? They're already perishing, it says. Okay, verse 4.
In whom the mighty one of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelieving, so that the enlightening of the good news of the esteem of Messiah, who is the likeness of Elohim, does not shine on them.
Okay, so the mighty one, the God of this age, he's out here doing his thing. He's out here blinding the minds of the unbelieving. He's out here doing it, right?
Can you elaborate on the God of this age for those who need to know the difference between the gods?
I mean, when we think about the idea of the mighty one of this age, Hasatan is out here, and these is his stomping grounds.
That's right.
He is the ruler of these these days and times over here. We sit up here and see all of these things that's going on. Wickedness is abounding all over the place.
Right.
And so when you line yourself up with the world, you're lining yourself up with Hasatan. When you line yourself up with the masses, right, you're lining yourself up with the mighty one of this age, right? And it says that he has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. The people who are non-believers, the people who don't believe in Yeshua HaMashiach, their minds have been blinded by the mighty one of this age.
Right.
And so when we fail to walk as light, we keep those people blind. That's what that verse 3 said. We keep, if your gospel is hid from those that are already perishing, the ones that's already been blinded in their minds by the mighty one of this age.
You know what? That's why I always said, and I wrote this in my book, right? I said, darkness cannot comprehend the light, yet it seeks to dim it unto its own darkness. But yet, walking in this truth, we will lose many while we walking in this truth. Family members, friends, whoever who disagree, and those who are under that strong delusion, I must say. But we will lose them. But here's the kicker. Even our own shadow will disappear when we no longer walk in the light of the sun. And I mean S-O-N, not just S-U-N.
Yeah. And so we look at these verses over here. These verses is helping us to understand that there's a way that we must be. Just like when we think about with Leviticus, there was a way that they must be.
Yeah.
The priest wasn't supposed to be sinning by mistake. That's why he had to sit up there and give the most expensive sacrifice as a result of it, because he was the one that people look to. Just like those that are followers of Messiah are the ones that people are supposed to be able to look to and see light. And so we have to be walking in such a way as to where we are actually the light of the world and not participating in all of this darkness, because this thing is not just affecting us, it's affecting those that see us. Just like the priest, it says that the guilt was upon the nation when he sinned by mistake. It's the same concept that we see over here. If our good news be veiled, it has been veiled from those that are perishing. Okay, verse 5.
For we do not proclaim ourselves, but Messiah Yeshua the Master, and ourselves your servants for the sake of Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
For Elohim, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," is the one who has shown in our hearts for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Elohim in the face of Yeshua Messiah.
Okay, very good. Let light shine out of darkness. This is what we have to be doing. This is what has to be our everyday reality, that we are indeed a light that's shining out of darkness. We're not sitting up here letting darkness be the thing that influences us, but we are being true light and influencing darkness, right? When we think about the idea of the priest or the whole nation, for that matter, the whole righteous nation sinning by mistake. The problem with that there is the fact that something went terribly wrong in order for that to happen, right? And what I'm saying over here is that when we think about the idea, the whole point of the spirit inside of you is to be able to lead you in righteousness. And so when you allow the spirit in you to actually lead you and guide you, you're not over here sinning by mistake, right? You're being the light that the Most High has called and empowered for you to be. You're being that in this world that is indeed perishing, present tense. And so we don't have the we can't have we can't be out here misrepresenting the Messiah, right? Because we have a call on. I don't care who you are. When you get to the place where you are a follower of Messiah, whether it was yesterday or 100 yesterdays ago, 1,000 yesterdays ago, I don't care. Many moons. I don't care who you are. You are a representative of the light, and you have to do all that you are able to do to maintain that witness, because there's people out here that are perishing right now, currently perishing. And when you're not walking and being that witness for them, you're veiling the good news that has been bestowed upon you from them, and they are staying in the state that they are in, and you potentially are moving back to where you used to be, all because you are not being true to who the Messiah has made for you to be able to be. And so, just kind of closing out, when we think about Leviticus and what we see with this idea of sinning by mistake and receiving this guilt as a result of the sin that is done, we have to understand that the Most High, he didn't give us this thing that's impossible to do. Especially now when we think about this idea of him actually putting his presence on the inside of us. He has given us everything that we need in order to succeed and be light in this world of darkness. And there's nothing that, there's no excuses that we're able to make to say that, it was just this thing or it was just that thing. He has made a way for us to be victorious in this world, and that way to victory is Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay. All right. So, do we have any last thoughts or questions or comments?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My brothers. When I summed this whole teachings up, it was very, very interesting. Woo! I love it. I love it so much. But it reminds me, when it comes to the world, the darkness of the world, they are of the world. That is why they speak from the world's perspective, and the world listens to them. And that's I love Yochanan 45, and that's 1 John, which brings me to what Yeshua said himself in Yaakov, James 4:4. He said, adulterers and adulterers, do you not know that friendship with the world is enemy with Yah? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Yah. That's why I always say, and I got this from you a while ago, because I watched your composure when we was debating with other people, and you was unmoved at all, and that was real interesting to me. But something you had told me from that, I said, one that's healed by standing on the Torah, which is supported by Yeshua's love, are not pained by those who show temper tantrums or discord towards us, but we understand the pain they carry within themselves. So I say this to my people who's listening, be set apart, for y'all set us apart. He set us apart from the rest of the world. Do not become his friend, or you will be an enemy of his. Let that sink in.
Yeah. And that's what we got to be about. We have to be about being a true representative of Messiah, right? He called us all to be that. And we have to really just be influencers out here. That's what it is to be salt. That's what it is to be light out here in this world. Like, we've been called out of this world, not to just be on the outside, but to cause others to be with us, right? And so we have a mission and a duty to be like the priest, or like the ones that Yeshua spoke about, to operate on a higher calling. And so let us just continue on this path and walk out this this journey and this mission that the Most High has given to us. Okay, so that being said, we'll say for now, Shabbat Shalom. We want to also thank everybody who's over here. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Always feel free to put your little input over here in the comments, right? We can see what's going on over here. Don't you have any questions, don't be afraid to go ahead, or comments or whatever, don't be afraid to put them over here in the comments. We can see what's going on.
And I also want to say this though, when y'all go to other people's house and they ask you to take their shoes off, you take your shoes off before you go in the house. We got what? We got 12 viewers right now with 4 likes, and all I'm saying is, when you come in the house, take your shoes off. Show some respect. Like us and subscribe. You won't be sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to, that's what gets the message out, is when we feed the algorithm, right? And you feed that by your likes and your subscribes. That's how we're able to continue to be a light to whoever we could be a light to. So that being said, y'all willing, we will be back on next Shabbat with another look at the scriptures. Okay.
Hallelujah.
All right. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Have a great week. Bless you.